What you see here are some of the best Kong and Godzilla animatronics. Today we'll be covering all the official animatronics from Godzilla and Kong movies. I'm Walt, the animatronic duck, and I'm joined by Kate Sheridan to talk about these impressive animatronics. From the nightmare-fuel Cybot Godzilla to the giant Kong animatronics. This video was suggested by you, so leave a comment on what we should cover next.
Fastpass. Godzilla Origins. By now, everyone has probably heard of the name Godzilla, not only fans of horror. The image of that large, mutant lizard tearing apart the city and wreaking havoc is in the minds of many. This fictional monster first appeared on screen in the 1954 Japanese film Godzilla, or Gojira. The movie was regarded as one of the great cinematic achievements, considering its visual effects and production value. Since then, Godzilla has become one of Japan's biggest cultural exports and has morphed into a worldwide pop culture icon. Dubbed the King of Monsters, it has been the feature of numerous Japanese and American movies and has been scaring viewers for decades. Bringing to life this large destructive monster is not an easy task at all. In fact, it's nothing short of an art form. It doesn't take much time for Godzilla to tear apart skyscrapers, but it does take a lot of time for Godzilla to be made. Bringing this large creature to life for the movies has involved many groups, including computer animators, VFX artists, and designers, to name a few. A huge investment of time and money. Toho, the Japanese film company, has been at the forefront of producing Godzilla suits and animatronics.
I have a question. What do you think of my costume? Also, don't forget to leave a like, they're completely free.
Cybot Godzilla, 1984. The first animatronic on the list is called Cybot Godzilla. It was featured in 1984's The Return of Godzilla. This movie served as both a sequel and a reboot to 1954's original Godzilla film. Naturally, the animatronic was made to integrate the original look as well. Four-toed, prominent fangs and ears, large fins, and a longer tail. The primary purpose of the animatronic was for close-up shots of the huge mutant lizard in the film, especially its head. It was one of Toho's first attempts to make a Godzilla animatronic. This Godzilla was made to have an even greater height so that it wouldn't be drowned out by the contemporary Tokyo skyline. Cybot Godzilla garnered a lot of publicity, even before the film's release. This was according to the plan of the film's production team. They took inspiration from the publicity gained by the huge King Kong model made for the 1976 film King Kong. Constructing such models does add to the film's brand value. The end result? The animatronic was massive, a whopping 16 feet tall and weighing 1.2 tons. Producing it cost a massive $475,000. In fact, the film was one of the most expensive movies made in Japan at the time. The Cybot's movement system was quite sophisticated and complex. It incorporated a hydraulically powered mechanical endoskeleton, which in turn was covered by a urethane skin. This skin contained 3,000 computer-operated parts which enabled it to make movements, such as moving its lips and arms and tilting its head. Moreover, the suit had a peculiar construction for its jaws. Unlike previous suits, whose lower jaws consisted of wire-operated flaps, this suit had jaws which were hinged, just like those of an actual animal. They slid back when opened. How's that for realism? Coming back to the present, the animatronic is still under the possession of the Toho Group, probably lying in one of their warehouses. It has been used for display in numerous film festivals and events, and has been maintained by Toho accordingly. The Cybot was refurbished and used in particular for publicity events surrounding Godzilla's 40th anniversary in 1994. It was also prominently on public display in Okinawa in 1985. Furthermore, it was used as a publicity item during the marketing of 1994's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. And not to forget the Cybot's appearance during the release of 1995's Godzilla vs. Destoroyah at the Ariake Coliseum in Tokyo. The towering monster figure on display, leaving many amazed and many shocked. Godzilla, 1998. The next animatronic on the list is the one used in the 1998 American remake of Godzilla. This is by far one of the most controversial Godzilla movies ever made. It wasn't that simple to bring Godzilla to America though, as it was the first Zilla to be produced completely by a Hollywood studio. Hollywood execs did have to seek permission from the Toho group to make an American version of this Japanese tale. Toho was very strict on how they wanted Godzilla to look, going as far as producing a 4-page memo on the exact physical requirements of the fire-breathing monster. It all did work out in the end, and the plans for the film were very ambitious. Unfortunately, the film wasn't received that well by critics for its writing and acting, and turned out to be somewhat of a box office failure. However, its use of animatronics was deemed revolutionary. It really was the game changer for special effects in Hollywood. The production and design team did not only resort to computer-generated imagery for the visuals, it also used a 6-scale animatronic model of Godzilla's upper body and also a 24th-scale Godzilla suit. They were designed by Patrick Tatopoulos. Veteran Disney Imagineer Bob Gurr was also involved in the design. However, it is Patrick who is the man behind Godzilla's somewhat new and refined look, as compared to older versions. He was instructed by director Roland Emmerich to make the monster agile and quick. Following this logic, Patrick thought the older Godzilla designs made it look bulkier and hence slower. So his focus was on creating a more streamlined Godzilla design who could move more swiftly. He wanted to give Godzilla a new look, but at the same time retain the spirit of the original one. A tricky balance to achieve indeed. It all started with a piece of pen and paper, moving on to a smaller model, which was finally used to make a bigger model. The final result was a remote-controlled animatronic that was a whopping 36 feet tall and weighed more than 14,000 pounds. No wonder Godzilla caused so much mayhem on the streets of Manhattan. The animatronic was integrated with a hydraulically driven skeleton to enable its bodily and facial movements. This skeleton was in turn operated by remote controls, which in turn were programmed by a computer. All in all, it took over a year to bring this gigantic monster to life. A very impressive feat, both in filmmaking and animatronics indeed. Needless to say, a lot of thought went into making this animatronic as impressive as possible. Each important body part was modeled after something. Its basic body structure was modeled after a dragon. Its arms and hands were human-like. Its face was designed like that of a crocodile, and its legs like an ostrich. There were a fair amount of close-up shots in the film, so emphasis was made on making it look as real as possible. In the end, the filmmakers did prefer to use more CGI over practical effects. As a result, out of the 185 shots featuring Godzilla in the film, 24 of them featured the animatronic. Shin Godzilla, 2016. Moving on, the Godzilla franchise has gone through numerous remakes. One of the most prominent recent ones is 2016's Shin Godzilla from Japan, the 31st Godzilla movie made. How's that for quantity? The Godzilla in this movie was a creation of nuclear waste dumping as opposed to the other incarnations which were a product of nuclear testing. The word Shin means incarnation of God. That should give an indication of the grand nature of this particular Godzilla. As this film was made relatively recently, there was a lot of pressure on the production team to make Godzilla look as real as possible, and make use of modern technology to aid that. Director Shinji Higuchi stated that he wanted to provide the most terrifying Godzilla that Japan's cutting-edge special effects movie making can muster. The production team, led by Hideaki Anno, used a variety of techniques to bring this vision to life. These included digital effects, puppets, and last but not least, animatronics. The film received mostly positive reviews for both its storyline and its visuals, so a win-win indeed. An upper body animatronic was developed, but eventually went on to be unused in the actual filming. The directors of the film and Toho scrapped the idea of using an animatronic and instead resorted to CGI for better visual results. This was in contrast to other blockbusters such as Jurassic Park and Iron Man, which used a hybrid approach integrating both props and CGI. According to VFX supervisor Atsuki Sato, fully restoring to digital effects allowed for quicker edits and, all in all, higher production value. Team director Hideaki Anno also felt that only sticking to the animatronic would allow for less agile movements, as it was operated mechanically with moving wires. CGI would also give filmmakers more freedom when it came to Godzilla's tail movement, as the animatronic tail was limited by wire movement. As a result, Shin Godzilla turned out to be the first Japanese Godzilla depicted primarily through CGI. Despite all of this, the Godzilla animatronic didn't go unnoticed. Leaked pictures of the prop circulated on the internet and received positive reception amongst fans of the franchise. A lot of people felt it would have been better if it had actually been used in the film. Now the animatronic finds its place in the Godzilla Museum in Japan, open for public viewing. There was also a Shin Godzilla statue installed in Hibiya, Japan in 2018. So the legacy of this movie definitely lives on. The Shin Godzilla version of the character became so popular and well-received that it found its way in numerous places, including Universal Studios in Japan and the Aqua Panorama at Canal City, Hanaka. So as you can see, Godzilla has been brought to life many times with the power of animatronics.
Now it's time for the King Kong animatronics, or should I say monkey animatronics.
Kong on fire. When a much-anticipated film comes out, the producers pay a lot of attention to its marketing. The same happened with the movie Kong: Skull Island. A giant and towering King Kong structure was produced for the film's premiere in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. A very intimidating and menacing view for everyone at the event. But this is not all. What followed is even more terrifying. Just when the presenter was starting the whole ceremony, a huge fire suddenly broke out within the King Kong structure. Just when you thought the night couldn't get any crazier, this happened. What followed was a mass evacuation, but the movie screening did go on as scheduled. Thankfully, there were no casualties or serious injuries. Things certainly did not happen as planned, but the night was definitely made memorable. The image of Kong and the stage in flames will surely be remembered by fans and all the people involved with the film, a real-life indication of the sheer destruction and madness that occurs in the movie. King Kong Giant Animatronic. The next animatronic on the list is known as the King Kong Giant Animatronic and was used in 1976's King Kong. The production of this movie wasn't without its fair share of struggles, and bringing Kong to life was undoubtedly one of the biggest struggles. Producer Dino De Laurentiis had a grand vision for this particular film. He wanted this to be a contemporary and modern take on King Kong, and therefore straight up refused to use stop-motion technology that was used in previous films. Instead, he wanted to build a full-sized mechanical King Kong. Despite many legal hurdles and financial challenges, he remained determined to this cause. The King Kong animatronic cost a whopping $1.7 million to produce. Standing at a massive height of 40 feet, it surely was a sight to behold. The team of artists and technicians responsible for bringing the mighty ape monster to life was led by Carlo Rambaldi. He would later go on to work on the special effects of other classic films too, such as Alien and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. However, this particular task was not easy by any means. He had to somehow produce a mammoth moving mechanical prop. Its scale and scope were much grander than anything he had ever done before. The overall King Kong structure consisted of various smaller components, including a mechanical core body, mechanical hands with working fingers, and a human-sized ape suit for long shot. For the ape suit, Rambaldi collaborated with Rick Baker. King Kong's producers were auditioning actors who could play Kong in those ape suit long shots. Ultimately, Baker himself wound up taking on the role because, he later said, they couldn't find anyone else stupid enough to wear the suit. The construction of the 40-foot-tall King Kong structure required tons of latex, aluminum, and hydraulics. Bringing this whole thing to life was not without its fair share of challenges. One of the biggest challenges was getting the hands to work properly. A lot of trial and error was involved in properly maneuvering the movement. However, the use of this animatronic was a disaster in one of the most important scenes, in which Kong is shown off at a noisy stadium in New York. It's the pivotal moment where Kong escapes and goes on his ill-fated rampage, a tantrum which eventually concludes at the top of the World Trade Center. This animatronic had a terrible malfunction when one of the many hydraulic pipes hidden inside of it ruptured, leaving fluid sluicing down the beast's leg. So the animatronic scene only lasts less than 3 seconds, and for the rest of the movie, the Rick Baker suit had to be used. This animatronic is still considered one of the most disastrous in practical effects history. But this would not be the end of it. In 1987, Kong was taken on a tour to Argentina, where it was part of a show with clowns. But due to various factors, it turned out to be unsuccessful. The plan was for the tour to continue, but due to the show's failure, investors abandoned the project and left the animatronic abandoned for a long time. The weather began to deteriorate this Kong animatronic since it was left out in the open, and various rumors say that it was destroyed by rats and dismantled by locals. Some people even say that they could see some of its remains in a garbage dump. However, some documents claim that the animatronic did go to Brazil, but then was sent back to the US. Whatever the real story is, we can say that despite its disastrous past, this animatronic deserves mention in this list. Giant Kong Animatronic Head. The next animatronic on the list is the Giant Kong Animatronic Head. These are, in fact, two life-size King Kong animatronic heads on display at the Madame Tussauds Museum in New York and London. Both the heads are a soaring 18 feet tall. A lot of firms were involved in the development of these animatronic heads, including Madame Tussauds, Millennium FX, Merlin Magic Making, Legendary Pictures, and Warner Brothers. Legendary provided the virtual model of Kong, which was then handed over to Engineered Arts, who, in collaboration with Millennium FX, designed and built the mechanical elements based on the model. These elements involved both the inner machinery and the outer skins. Great attention was paid to producing an accurate animatronic that worked as effectively as possible. The result? This is not just your average animatronic. It is an interactive and dynamic one, as opposed to a static one, making use of state-of-the-art sensors and customized software. Its eyes follow you around the room, and its nostrils also blast air when someone comes close. These sensors use LiDAR technology in their operations, if we're to go into technicalities. It is this same technology that enables the movements and reactions of the head to be instant and seamless. Overall, this animatronic truly utilizes the power of modern technology to produce something very intimidating, graphic, and realistic. King Kong Animatronic, King Kong Broadway. Now, let's head to the iconic theater district in New York. A massive 20-foot tall and 2,000-pound Kong animatronic was used in the play King Kong Alive on Broadway, which opened back in November 2018. Sony Tilders and Creature Technology Co. were the ones behind the creation of this colossal animatronic. The construction took place in Australia and took several months. In the end, it was so well designed and built that the creators actually won a special Tony Award for it in 2019. Now, bringing this monster to life was not an easy task at all, especially in the context of a live play. For maneuvering its movements, there were 10 actors that operated its limbs alongside an automatic system that operated more complex robotic movements. Needless to say, this whole thing was a very crazy yet ambitious idea. King Kong turned out to be an integral part of the play. It wasn't just considered a separate prop. It was very much a part of the play, just like all the other actors. A magnificent beast, standing tall in all its glory. A creature that employs the use of tons of state-of-the-art features, such as a skeleton of steel, sculpted muscles, onboard hydraulics, and even the same servo motors that NASA's Mars rover used. Another noteworthy technical aspect was the sound design. Sound designer Peter Helensky ensured that Kong would have a very vast vocal range. This was definitely one of the key factors that made Kong stand out in the play. Producing the sounds involved the use of a real-time sound puppeteer who would act out the sounds, which would go through a series of digital enhancements before being loudly beamed throughout the auditorium. All of this leaving the crowds in awe and also a little bit intimidated. All in all, this particular animatronic showed us all that animatronics can very well find themselves in the midst of live-action plays. A very unique and interesting mix. King Kong Encounter. Next on the list is King Kong Encounter. It's an attraction that used to be part of the studio tour at Universal Studios Hollywood in California. The inspiration for the ride was the 1976 King Kong movie. It takes riders through a set of New York City, where Kong has caused utmost destruction, broken streetlights, flipped over cars, derailed trains, and some fires. A very daunting and eerie atmosphere indeed. One of the core aspects of this whole ride was the mammoth 30-foot tall and 7-ton heavy King Kong animatronic. At the time, this was the largest and most complex animatronic ever made. Certainly one for the record books. The figure was designed by the very renowned Disney Imagineer Bob Gurr. The main focus for this animatronic was making it as detailed as possible. This is reflected by the fact that Kong even had banana-scented breath. Needless to say, it turned out to be quite revolutionary and paved the way for more complex animatronics that would come up in the future. This whole grand vision came at a cost, a massive $7 million to be precise, and the project took over a year to be completed. A lot of effort to produce the spectacular display of King Kong in all his glory, and all this hard work did bear its fruit, as the ride attracted millions of people in total. certainly made its name. But unfortunately, King Kong Encounter was not meant to last forever. The animatronic and the ride were destroyed in the 2008 Universal Studios fire, bringing an end to 20 years of an iconic ride. Kong Skull Island, Reign of Kong. Universal planned to build a studio tour in Florida, but Disney beat them by opening their own studio-themed park. So Universal smartly split the components of the Hollywood studio tour into separate standalone rides. So Kong was supersized into its own attraction with the wild, raging ape terrorizing Manhattan with guests caught in the crossfires. But after barely a decade in action, KONGFRONTATION folded to Universal's rapid growth, and Revenge of the Mummy took its spot. After a 14-year absence, the King returned to Universal's Islands of Adventure. Skull Island, Reign of Kong takes us to the prehistoric, sinister jungles of an uncharted island. At the end of the ride, we get to see Kong again. This animatronic is nearly 30 feet tall and 18 feet wide. It also looks so real. In fact, the head of King Kong is larger than the size of an automobile and boasts terrifying scars. There's a reason why Universal Orlando described this animatronic as the most visceral encounter with King Kong ever. It's equally impressive and scary. KONGFRONTATION. This was one of the most amazing rides at the Universal Studios Florida theme park. The ride was opened back in 1990 and is a very detailed and elaborate ride from start to finish. Most of the ride settings are meant to recreate the destruction of New York City caused by King Kong in the 1976 Kong movie. This was done in many ways, including projections, figures, and sound and visual effects. However, one of the most noteworthy aspects was the use of animatronics. KONGFRONTATION features not one, but two King Kong animatronics. They were designed by MCA Planning and Development and Totally Fun Company. Both of them are massive, with a height of 39 feet and a width of 54 feet. Both are used at separate parts of the ride. The one used in the street scene weighs a whopping 13,000 pounds, and the one used in the bridge scene weighs 8,000 pounds. Both animatronics are the product of very sophisticated engineering. They have been made out to be both digital and analog and have the ability to perform 62 distinct functions. One interesting detail is that the animatronics have been given banana breath when Kong roars. So the animatronics are definitely stunning in both looks and feel. Unfortunately, KONGFRONTATION and all its spectacular showpieces did eventually come to an end in 2002 due to maintenance troubles. Nevertheless, the ride and its distinguished animatronics were memorable while they lasted. As you can see, King Kong has been brought to life many times with the power of animatronics. What's your favorite one on our list and why? Which one do you think was the scariest? Do you want to see other similar animatronics lists? Be sure to comment below. And subscribe to our channel to keep up with the world of theme parks. Interested in behind-the-scenes content? Be sure to check out our social links in the description.